Okay, welcome to the fifth session, enterprise programming. Having a look at building on top of the basic Ajax process that we covered last week and in the lab, through into using library functions to do that. I know some people have problems with some parts of the lab because there's a lot to take in, but in general, you probably wouldn't really use that code behind it. You would normally use a library on top of it to do it. It's fairly important that you know the basic process, what's going on, but in general, you'd probably use a library, something like JQuery. There's various other ones like Scriptaculous and Dojo. JQuery tends to be one of the sort of leading ones out there for it. So we're going to have a look at what JQuery is today, and then in the labs have you sort of doing a few of these sessions. Basically all it is a lot of code written in JavaScript that aims at doing the typical things that you do in an Ajax type operation, about picking values up off a form, invoking something, and then where to go when it comes back. We have quite a bit of code for that. What's going on there? It had a bit of code on that remote side to run and then come back and run a handler function on this side. Just before I start on that, after today, you'll be in a fairly good position to do quite a good start on some of the assignment. Now I will have a session specifically about the assignment, both in terms of labs and a lecture session on it where I'll go over it. But I know I've been asked quite a few times already by people saying, you know, can we make a start on it yet? And you know, sort of keen to get underway with it. The assignment is about setting up a web service that can offer its services in a variety of ways. Some of the ways we haven't covered as yet, but you could get the basic web service up and running more or less sort of now for it. We're going to offer a web service just for some information, and what the actual web service is doesn't really matter. It's just something that delivers back some information to somebody. Your role is normally linking into some sort of web service in the background for it. In this particular case, it's just sending back a bit of film information out of a little database of films, who directed, who stars in it, a little review, that sort of stuff for it. And there's a ready-made set of data available for that if you like to sort of use. There's a little SQL script that will create a film database for you. And an API interface would have things like being able to add a film into there, to be able to get a list of films, to be able to search films, to be able to insert a new film. And for the purposes of the assignment, as I say, it doesn't really matter what that service is actually delivering, and really what's in a film class, although there's a few demos of the film class available from earlier exercises. So you might have a few sort of attributes like that in them. You can add others if you like. There's some background storage of it. The data will just be initially on a MySQL database for it. You can try and put it in memory, but it's not such a good idea to do that. But the general thing that we're assessing you on are these aspects to it. One, that you can set up a simple web service, so you've got to give access to some sort of data in the background to it. So here we're just going to have a film web service with HTTP calls, so we'll be able to retrieve those. Now, if you have a look at one of the examples from last week, there's a customer one that was done in the exercises, and there was also a cities one for it. They are both examples that are very, very, very similar to what you're going to be doing here to it. You've got some sort of data source in the background, and then you're offering it, sending it out in a variety of manners. But the idea is that you're not sending it out as a web page. A web service doesn't send out an HTML web page. A web service interacts with another machine-based service to retrieve the raw data. Now that other requester might request the data in a variety of formats. they may say, "Well, can you just give me that data in JSON, or can you give it me in a comma delimited format, or can you give it me in XML?" So your web service should be able to deliver that data in a variety of formats. And again, that's sort of fairly similar to what we've done. So those first two are really based around, if you can sort of have a look at the cities example and the customer example that's done in the exercises, very similar to the film one. And then later on, you'll have something at the other side on the client end that will retrieve that data. It'll put in a request to get some films, or here's a film, can you just push it in there? And you'll do a front end that interacts with something that's sending you JSON, XML, or whichever. So you'll design an Ajax-based front end for that, ideally using an additional library to do it with you. So something like JQuery to help you do those calls for it. And if you get the better ones, we'll use a GUI addition to jQuery. There's a jQuery user interface to help you build the interface to it. So certainly a large part of it, well, after we've done these sort of Ajax sessions this week, you'll be able to do. Next week we're going to set off on cloud services, where we'll have set up some Google accounts for you, and you'll be able to run something called the Google App Engine, where we'll have a cloud-based service for this. So you'll be able to store your web service in a cloud rather than on sort of local host, and have them handle the data stores for it. It won't be done using MySQL for it, but that won't make too much of a difference if you've written your code well enough, so the data accessor object isn't so interlinked with your database that it's forcing it to go to sort of MySQL. When you write your code, you'll find that it should be fairly easy to move over to a cloud-based one. Later on, we'll have another way of interacting with it, probably about late November, when we have a look at REST interaction to sort of retrieve it. So there's still some parts that we can't do as yet. The bit about WSDL is when we're looking at SOAP applications, something called the Simple Object Access Protocol. Again, sort of not until about the third week of November that we're doing something like that. So there's certain things that we can't do right now, but certainly those first two bullet points after now you can do, and after this week that sort of front end you can work with. The mathematicians amongst you will have quickly added that up, I'm sure, and thought that doesn't add up to 100%. And there is an evaluation section worth a whopping 30 marks, which is where we're assessing your technique for that. Not just how you're doing the job, is it working well to it? Is it a scalable application? Are you using the right library functions? Have you done a lot of this manually when perhaps you could have used something like JSON to convert it into JSON? Or you could have used JAX-B instead of manually converting it to XML. So in a lot of cases you can do these things and just code it yourself. And so in some cases we're looking for using the right library. In other cases we're using the right software engineering techniques. As I say, whether it's scalable, whether you're using the right sort of patterns of approach to design these. So there's a review section at the end where you'll need to demonstrate that you're writing professional code and that you're using the right software engineering techniques. Now this thing will be particularly useful in your project as well, because certainly that sort of section is a large part of your project report at the end of the year, where you have to justify what you've done and show that you use sort of good techniques. So a lot of what you sort of write there will give you good practice for writing that report later on. But as I say, I'll have a full session on that in a couple of weeks. Once we've probably got the web service, the cloud-based service out of the way. But you can make a start on it sort of now if you like to do sort of certain parts to it. But today, just looking at JQuery. And you're probably trying to get your head around some of the things that we did in Ajax last week, or it's all written in JavaScript about how you make the the JavaScript code take over from the browser. You decide when to invoke the server. You decide what happens when the data comes back, rather than that sort of submit button that a server, a web page normally has to it. Now I'm not going to go over, part of this is just sort of why we use Ajax again. This is because this particular section did come as a sort of standalone part as well, without the need to have done the Ajax part before. So some of the slides have come from sort of previous ones. But we'll introduce the basic JQuery library and how you might invoke some of the things and what they actually do in the background, and show you how you can do in perhaps sort of one line what took you 20 lines to do in sort of Ajax for it. So I don't particularly want to go over where Ajax is coming from and why we use sort of web apps. This is a thing that we did sort of last week. There's some slides lifted out of it, the popularity of Ajax, all that sort of thing. More jumping into where we use this sort of JQuery. Now, I'm not trying to say you should only use JQuery, only sort of really going into jQuery because it's probably the most popular. You'll find that there are other libraries that work in a similar way. They might have a different syntax, but they